Hello. Good evening and welcome. Welcome as we come together once again on a Tuesday evening from Eastside Lutheran Church in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. My name is Lane Nelson. I am the pastor here at Eastside Lutheran, and it is a joy to be with you. We will give people another minute or two to see that this live broadcast is up and give them a chance to kind of tune in. So if you are just tuning in now, please throw up a comment, let us know you're here so that I know that there's somebody actually to visit with tonight as we continue our weekly Bible studies discussion. I hope that you have been having a good week wherever it is that you find yourself tonight. Pray that this has been a good day for you and that you are enjoying the summer. There has been lots of things going on at Eastside Lutheran since we were together just a week ago. As of tonight, we are still in the midst of a pandemic out there in the world here in July of 2020. And so we are still kind of rolling with what summer brings. I see that Wayne is here. Nice to see you, Wayne. Oh, look at that. The Shotwells are here. How's Wayne and Diana Shotwell? Connie, nice to see you. Karen, good evening as well. So good to have you guys with us. If you hear a little music, there was somebody, one of our neighborhood wanderers who was parked outside our building, plugging their phone into our jack, getting a little juice and playing some loud music while they were doing it. But hopefully that won't be too much of a distraction through here. Tonight, we are continuing our series on Together in Faith, Religions and Denominations. But before we jump into that, I want to follow up with what I was starting to say about how just this past week there has been lots going on, even in the midst of pandemic. On Sunday, we held our first parking lot worship. And so after we did our live stream broadcast on Sunday morning, we went outside, and at 11 o'clock, we had people in lawn chairs. And I was thrilled. We had about 3 times as many people show up. I was hoping we would get 50, but we had almost 150 sitting out there in lawn chairs. And so it was just so fun to see everybody, even if they were all masked and you just could see their eyes. But it reminded me of that power of community and of how much I have missed that since it's been 4 weeks since we had in-person worship in our sanctuary. We also had a congregational vote, and we have voted to call an associate pastor, and so we were waiting for that person to officially get their paperwork and sign it, but everything is good, and hopefully that will be going forward on the 1st of September. So we are very, very excited for that. A wonderful vote, 113 to 2. Actually, I think there was probably about 119 to 2 once a few straggling votes came in. So again, very exciting. And then in 2 weeks, 26th of July, we will start worshiping in the sanctuary for the first time in 4.5 months. So we continue to pray that that goes well, and we look forward to the opportunity. See, we have a couple of more folks who have jumped in. Say hi to Colin and Harriet. Nice to have you guys here. Nice to see you also, Dee. Thanks for being here. Well, just a quick recap on this Together in Faith, Religions and Denominations. A religion is a larger system of beliefs in the unseen world, and then we have denominations, specifically in the Christian faith, which would be smaller groups unique to one another but still sharing the main traits of that larger body, a group with distinctly held beliefs within a larger religion, i.e. Lutherans are a denomination of the Christian religion. Hi to Sharon. Nice to have you here tonight as well. Looks like we have a good group of folks. Hopefully you are finding yourself sitting out on a patio somewhere enjoying this beautiful evening that we have tonight in Sioux Falls as we get ready to dive into some learning. Again, as we go through this, our hope is not to look at a specific religion or a specific denomination and just point out all the things that are bad or all the things that we don't necessarily agree with about them, but to approach it from a standpoint of learning so that we can better ask that question, why am I a Christian and why am I a Lutheran? And really, what difference does Jesus make in my life? And that kind of helps us grow in our own faith and helps us be the people that God is calling us to be as we understand ourselves as people saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. And so we look at that broader world that we live in. Again, to kind of summarize our own faith, Christians say it's all about Jesus, and that's what makes us unique from the other religions in the world, and that God has done it for us, and we receive it all as gift. Those are things that help make it specifically Lutheran for us. Which then brings us to tonight's topic, Hinduism. Now, I will say, first off, out of the gate, I am not an expert in Hinduism, not by any stretch of the imagination. But I was looking in this book, Honoring Our Neighbor's Faith, and that's where a lot of what tonight's information is coming from. But it's also kind of a basis that helped me decide to do this series, where it looks at different denominations and religions and then pairs it alongside what we believe as ELCA Lutherans so that we can see where we're similar and where we're not similar. But as I was looking in that book, there is a family tree of religions. And I know that that is very hard to see on this graphic, but I'll briefly explain what it is. If you run across the bottom, you have all of these different religions and denominations. And then if you trace the line up, you can see where it is that they connect or branch off from other denominations and other religions. Now, I'm going to direct your attention to the far left side of this graphic where we have Buddhism and Hinduism. And if you can try and scroll up, and maybe when this is done, you can go back, review this, pause it on this frame, and kind of focus in. But if you go straight up, you see that those are the only two on this list of religions and denominations, Buddhism and Hinduism, that do not connect with other groups. They are kind of in and of themselves, and they go back a long, long time, both of them. So I thought it would be fun for me personally to learn a little bit more about Hinduism. Now, this family tree, if we look at that, on the top it tells us that to find the denomination at the bottom of the page and follow the line up to see where it is developed from and approximately when. Some of the relationships generated or denominations are not connected to others, like Hinduism that we're looking at tonight, and others have significantly strong relationships. So that's a little bit about where this comes from. It's also just a little bit about why I thought of looking at Hinduism tonight. And so with that as a bit of an introduction, let's take a little time and jump into this. Right off the bat, just some statistics about Hinduism. Hinduism is a large overarching body, and there are many different sects and many different versions and many different, what we might say, denominations a part of it. But as an overall group, they share a common trait as a world religion. And they worship through meditation and mantras and offerings. And there is no overall governing body in Hinduism. It's very individualistic, at least from what I'm learning. But they do have kind of local spiritual direction in various communities. They tend to be, people who follow Hinduism tend to be well educated. There's a lot of thought and kind of, there's a lot of cerebralness that I see as I kind of learn about this religion. And so it makes sense to me that the folks who follow it tend to be kind of well educated, or at least are thinkers. We have in the United States, according to the last numbers of 2015, 2.23 million members, which would make it the fourth largest faith in the United States, which for me, as somebody living in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, was kind of a surprise because we just don't have a lot of people who practice Hinduism here. We certainly have some, and it's growing, but I was surprised to see that it was the fourth largest faith in the United States. If we look at it on a little bit bigger scale, we see there are 1.2 billion Hindus in the world, which makes up over 15% of the world's population. So it certainly makes sense that we would want to know a little bit more about what this faith is all about, seeing how so many people in the world subscribe to it. If you take those numbers, you can see that it makes it then the third largest faith in the world behind Christianity, which has 2.3 billion, and Islam, which has 1.9 billion members. Now, again, these numbers are already 5 years old, so I'm sure they are adjusted. You can do a Google search, I'm sure, and come up with numbers that are perhaps a little bit more accurate. But, again, me just personally kind of blown away that there are so many people who follow Hinduism. So as a person of faith myself, I think it only makes sense to try and learn a little bit more about that and what it is all about. A quote to share with you. Truth is one. Sages call it by various names. And that comes from the Rig Veda. Truth is a central concept in Hinduism, and getting to truth, getting to oneness, and it kind of pervades the entirety of this particular faith. Now, in its history and origins, Hinduism, as shown on that diagram of the family tree, kind of runs up and does not connect with others. It has been called perhaps the oldest religion in the world, and it comes from the Indian subcontinent area for the most part. And Hinduism in general is a synthesis of various Indian traditions and cultures, and there is not one known founder, but more just a collection of people's practices and beliefs. Now, a little more specifically tonight, because there are such great variety in Hinduism, we are going to be looking at the Vedanta, and forgive my pronunciations with not having a background in this. I'm sure there are many things tonight that I will be mispronouncing, so please forgive me as we go through that. But specifically, the aspect of Hinduism we are looking at is Vedanta, and of course it would have then the Veda, or the Veda, depending on your pronunciation, at the heart of that, kind of the sacred text, if you will, the Bible of sorts that we might make a comparison to as Christians. Now, Vedas, as this little slide on the screen shows, are ancient texts. They convey timeless truths revealed to the sages, and they go back 4,000 to 5,000 years. And then in Vedanta, they become the basis of inspiration and of religious practice. And that term Veda is literally meaning knowledge in the Sanskrit language. So that's what we are going to be looking at as we go through. Vedanta is one of 6 different schools of Hindu philosophy, or ways of interpreting the world for the Hindu people. And it's the culmination of all of these Vedas that are put together. There are 4 different Vedas, and each of the 4 Vedas have 4 parts, and it's the last part of each of these Vedas, as I understand it, that kind of provides for that main inspiration for each of them. It's kind of the climax portion of that. So on some level, even though Hinduism can be a very individualistic, or at least perceived as individualistic kind of religion, there is that basis of the book behind it to kind of help guide. And that, of course, the Vedas giving us Vedanta. 3 main schools of Vedanta philosophy. Found these kind of interesting. The first one being dualism, and in dualism, as the name suggests, God, or Brahman, and humanity are separate. So there are 2 dual. You have God and you have humanity, 2 separate entities. In qualified non-dualism, you have humanity making up the parts and God making up the whole. And then in non-dualism, or Advaita, again my pronunciation, you have God and humanity united. And so we see that even in Hinduism, we have Vedanta, and then you still have within that three different ways of interpreting God and humanity. And that's really what each of these are trying to do. Each of these three are ways of addressing that question of what's the relationship between God, humanity, and the world. And so, again, there you kind of get some of that thinking aspect, those well-educated aspect of what is so appealing to the world in Hinduism, looking at the relationship of God, humanity, and of nature, the world around us. And that's such a, I think, such a base human desire for all of us, even as Christians. You know, those are those questions that kind of drive us to delve deeper into our understanding of our own religion, of our own faith. Lots of more little details to run through. I'll try to do this relatively quickly. We have that term Brahman, which is God, and that would be the highest reality. He would be the absolute. The goal of life is to establish a pure and eternal relationship with this ultimate reality of Brahma. Now, in Hindu thought, the universe is a misperception of this one true reality of God. That was surprising to me. I did not realize that. This, the whole world that we live in, everything that we see and touch and feel, the things that we do as we go out to get in our car and go home and have supper, it's a misperception of the one true reality of God. And so that's where then this process begins, is to rectify that. And the power of Brahman, or of God, to be able to project this appearance is known as Maya, or sometimes translated as magic or as a cosmic illusion. So thus, for humanity, our own true nature in Hinduism is divine. We are really one with Brahman. And we fail to realize our reality because we believe what our senses tell us. We believe that this table is here, and we believe everything in this world is finite and changing and divided, and it becomes our assumed reality. And so thus then the goal is to see through our mistakes, to realize that at a deep level that our true nature is truly one with Brahma. So we then, individual souls, or jivas, again, not sure the pronunciation, are continually seeking to be reunited with that absolute truth, with that absolute one reality, with Brahman. Which then kind of brings us to these concepts that maybe most lay Americans know about Hinduism, if they know anything, and that would be karma and reincarnation. Karma, as I am now coming to understand it, is based on cause and effect. My naive understanding of karma had kind of been that concept of you get what you give, but there's a little bit more to it. And so I want to take and read from this book real briefly a paragraph helping to better understand these two concepts of karma and of how that then connects with reincarnation. Every one of our actions, thoughts, and desires creates a kind of vibrational impression or samskara on us. These samskaras are what give us our tendencies. The law of karma states that until one transcends this relative plane of existence and is reunited with Brahman, every action will have its reaction. Our karma, or our actions, might not bear fruit in this life, but may be stored until a future life. At the time of death, if an individual has not yet realized his or her divine nature, the soul, or the jiva, after death may experience heavenly or hellish realms until he or she reincarnates in a new body. The options available to the jiva are restricted according to the stored karmas and the lessons that need to be learned. And so while my naive understanding of karma was that, you kind of get what you give, for Hindus it's more significant than that, because your actions and the way that you treat others, the things that you put out through your vibrations in the world, good or bad, ultimately then influence how you become reincarnated. And again, it's that continual process of trying to get better and better until you come to that reality that you really are one with God, with Brahman, and that everything else is just a cosmic dream. So the actions from Hindus are so important because their eternity is based on that or relies on that. And it's not too far of a jump for some Christians who follow that same concept of our actions are so important because if we act badly, we'll never be right with God. And we won't get into heaven or earn our salvation. So I can see some parallels there between Hinduism and Christianity, or at least some schools. But for Lutherans, we have that different understanding of justification by grace through faith, whereas that our actions can never be good enough to determine the right karmas to get us into heaven. And so God instead sends Jesus into the world who does it for us. Again, karma, this cause and effect, and then reincarnation happening over and over again until we realize our oneness with Brahma, because that might take us many lifetimes to accomplish in the Hindu faith. Ultimately, we in Hinduism then would awaken through our spiritual practices, the things of meditation and offerings and whatnot and mantras that we talked about, until we awaken to this true and absolute freedom, love, and peace. And so those concepts too are prominent within Christianity, but we approach them and we get to them from vastly different places. So in a nutshell, kind of looking at our own Lutheran Christian belief in a personal and triune God, for us as Lutheran Christians, it doesn't depend on us. And I think that's just so significant. We can't overstate that. Our faith, our salvation, our oneness with God, to use that terminology, it doesn't depend on us. And we are not one with God. We are separate from God. We have that common phrase of saying, God is God and I am not. Or there is a God and it's not me. But we are brought back to God, or brought back to right relationship with God through what has been done for us in Jesus Christ. And we are unique, and we have but one earthly life to live here in this world. And so again, this has been kind of a very brief painting with a broad brush stroke at what Hinduism is. I'm going to guess many of you have such a deeper understanding than I, and everything I've got is basically just come from learning. I don't know that I am even friends with anybody who follows the practices of Hinduism, especially Vedanta Hinduism. I do have some friends who are Buddhist and of other denominations, and certainly my kids through school have friends of people who follow Islam. And so if we get to the point when we are looking at those religions, it might be fun to bring some of those people into the conversation to give us a more personal one-on-one kind of understanding. But we will move our way there in time. But a couple of things, as we go forward with this, hopefully you are enjoying this look at world religions and denominations. It's certainly fun for me to be able to grow in my knowledge of these other faith traditions. A couple I want to spend significant time on, if possible, and maybe even to do 1 or 2 weeks on these. That Roman Catholicism, because we are so closely related to that as Lutheran Christians, but then also on Judaism, because so many of the world's religions are connected to that Abrahamic faith. And as Christians, we follow this Rabbi Jesus who walked the earth, who was Jewish, but then who changed our understanding of God. Now, obviously, I know that Jesus was God in flesh in the world, but the tradition that he came out of was Judaism. And so those are two I hope to look at in more depth, but we'll go down that road as the weeks progress. If there are others that you would like to look at, please give a shout out, put it in the comments, and we'll go forward with there. I want to say hi to Jackie. I see she commented some time ago. Also Carol and also Colleen. Nice to have you guys here. It means a lot to me that you guys are willing to spend a portion of your evening as we kind of make our way through the summer. Again, I hope you've been sitting out on your back porch or your patio or somewhere enjoying a beautiful evening as we study and dive deeper into these faith traditions. And hopefully these faith traditions cause each of us to want to grow a little bit more in our own Christian Lutheran understanding and seeing what these other faith traditions are made up for me, helps me realize all the more why it is that I understand God and humanity and nature the way I do. And that is through a very personal God who comes to each one of us through a person in Jesus Christ, who does it for us so that our salvation doesn't have to depend on our own actions. Because I know personally it would be a bad thing if that was the case. But then a God who is also there with us, loving us, no matter what we might be facing, no matter what you might be facing tonight, whether that's health conditions or loneliness or just confusion in a world of pandemic. There's no need for you to try and transcend to some other reality to find peace, love, and freedom, because it comes to you already in the God we know and see in Jesus Christ. So let us do as we do each of these Tuesday nights and close with Luther's evening prayer. I give thanks to you, Heavenly Father, through Jesus Christ, your dear Son, that you have graciously protected me today. I ask you to forgive me all my sins where I have done wrong, and graciously protect me tonight. Into your hands I commend myself, my body, my soul, and all that is mine. Let your holy angel be with me, so that the wicked foe may have no power over me. Amen. Amen, meanings yea, yea, and it shall be so, or yes, these things are true. May you know God's truth in Jesus in your own life. Have a great night. God bless you all.